The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth with myself. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the Blessed One, the Arhat, the fully enlightened one. So, as we saw yesterday, the Buddha wasn't always greeted with respect, generosity, and courtesy, at least initially. Sometimes people were aggressive, disrespectful, rude, and even hostile. But that's just a fact he accepted. And in today's sutta, which is called the Vasala Sutta, or the Outcast, it has another rough beginning. The Vasala Sutta is found in the Sutta Nipata. And the Buddha is dwelling at Savatthi in Jedda's Grove. I got a few tongue twisters here. Anatta Pantika's Park. That's where the Jeddah Grove was. And the Jeddah Grove area was an area given to the Buddha for him and his disciples to reside and practice in. So over time, there are different places in northern India where land was set aside for the Buddha and his monks, and there's a place everyone could come and hear the Buddha speak. And the Buddha, well into his old age, lived a very itinerant life, traveling from one area of northern India to another. This was so that he could spread the Dharma. He could go out into all these different areas and be with people and talk with them and practice with them. There's a thing the Buddha said about when monks are on alms round, they should be like a honeybee. He said the honeybee leaves something for the flowers. So this is, I think, part of the reason he was itinerant in that day, or it's also a reason why we do our alms round like we do it. A monk should not overdo his supporters, her supporters. Okay. So let's get back to the sutta. It's early morning. Actually, it's probably mid-morning. The Buddha dresses. He dresses. It must have been early morning. But he goes out with his alms bowl and robe, usually kind of early to mid-morning. So the Buddha heads into the city of Savatthi for alms, his food for the day. And when going on an alms round, it was Buddha's practice to go to every house. I guess unless they had some kind of big sign out in front of it saying, "Don't come here." But he would just go indiscriminately to every house on the route. Well, some of his monks felt that you should only go to the house of the rich, because they obviously had plenty. They're concerned about the poor, and they said you should only go to the rich. Others felt you should only go to the houses of the poor, because they could use the merit. Their offerings would give them merit. The Buddha informed these monks and all his monks that both had it wrong. Almsgiving has nothing to do with rich or poor. Okay? And as we know, those with little can be as generous or more so than others. They know what it means to have little. Years ago, I was on an alms round in Mount Shasta, and we were down approaching General Produce. I think we were near the Chinese restaurant in town. And there was a man sitting down in front of the buildings there. He appeared to me he might be homeless. He was eating a sandwich, and this is about probably towards 11:30 in the morning. So he got up and he approached us and he said, "What are you doing?" And so we explained. Well, then he turned around and he gave his sandwich, the sandwich that he was eating, the uneaten part. He wanted to give as an offering. I felt kind of bad about this because it was his lunch. And so I, made some attempts to say, you don't have to give that, or whatever. But he really wanted to give it. He really wanted to offer it. So he ended up putting it in my bowl, and he asked for merit for his sister. And it was just an interesting exchange and event. So again, back to the sutta. So the Buddha approaches a Brahmin's house, and this is a real tongue twister. So, Agi ka avaga. Vaja, okay. Agi ka avaja. Fortunately, I don't have to pronounce that again. But he approaches this. He's approaching this Brahmin's house, and it turns out that the Brahmin had just made his Brahma puja previous to the Buddha arriving there, and so the Buddha's approaching, and this Brahmin sees him coming from a distance and shouts out to him, "Stop right there, you shaveling! Right there, you low ascetic! Right there, you outcast!" So a shaveling is someone with a shaven head. Probably specifically an ascetic, a religious seeker who's living on alms. But he wasn't too pleased to see him. Okay. Well, the Buddha replies, "But do you know, Brahmin, what an outcast is, or the qualities that make one an outcast?" So the Brahmin kind of settles down a bit here, and he honestly says, "I do not know, Master Gautama, an outcast. I do not know, Master Gautama, what an outcast is, or the qualities that make one an outcast. Please teach me the Dhamma in such a way that I might come to know what an outcast is, and the qualities that make one an outcast." So it looks like this Brahmin is having a bit of change of heart. At this time in India, there would have been all kinds of ascetics going for alms food. And I found an interesting footnote in a translation by Piyadasi Thera, okay? And he gives a bit of an explanation about what's going on with the Buddha and this Brahmin. He says, "Abusive terms used by the Brahmin and the disrespectful address that follows need a word of explanation. The Brahmin had just prepared his offering to the great Brahma, his god. When his eyes fell upon a Buddha, he just made this offering when his eyes fell on the Buddha. To the Brahmin, this sight of a shaven-headed recluse was an unlucky sign. Hence he burst into angry words. The Buddha, however, was unruffled and spoke to him quietly and spoke to him quietly in words of cadence. The Brahmin, apparently repenting of his folly, addressed the Buddha courteously." So whether that, that he just made his puja, anyway, I don't, basically there was no excuse for doing that. He just did what he did. So the caste system was very entrenched in India at the time of the Buddha. And the Buddha, as we know, really went against the grain of his culture. For the Buddha, it was not what class you were born into that gave you identity, but rather the way you lived your life. You were not predestined with no ability to change fate. This was quite a revolutionary way to think at this point in history. I went to India a couple years ago, okay, and although the caste system, as I understand, was made illegal when India gained its independence from Britain in 1949, well, from what I could see, and granted I was only in India for 3 weeks, but it appeared to me that the caste system is still so strong culturally that it continues to this day. Interestingly, for the Dalits, or the oppressed, so this is what used to be called the untouchable class. And actually the word Dalit means the oppressed, which they prefer to being called untouchable. Well, for those people, Buddhism can offer a way out because of these very teachings that the Buddha gave. And it's it's a way out from this caste system. So in the sutta, the Buddha then explains what an outcast is to the Brahmin. And so let me read a number of these. So he says an outcast is someone who is angry and hostile and evil, and an evil denigrator, deficient in view, a hypocrite. They are one who injures a living being, who has no kindness towards living beings. One who strikes or attacks villagers and towns, notorious as an oppressor. One who takes what has not been given, stealing the belongings of others. One who, having taken out a loan, flees when pressed to pay it back. One who, from desire for some item, strikes a person traveling along a road and takes away the item. An outcast is a person who, for his own sake, for the sake of others, and for the sake of wealth, speaks falsely when questioned as a witness. An outcast is one who is transgressing with the wives of his relatives or friends, whether by force or through endearment. An outcast is one who, when they are able, does not support his mother or father when they grow old. An outcast is one who strikes or verbally abuses his mother or father, his brother, sister, or mother-in-law. An outcast is one who, when asked about the good, instructs others in what is harmful, who gives advice in an obscure way. An outcast is one having done a bad deed, wishes, may they not find out about me, a person of concealed action. An outcast is one who, when visiting another's family, enjoys there a meal of fine food, but does not return the favor to his host. An outcast is one who deceives with false speech. An outcast is one who verbally abuses a Brahmin or an ascetic that has arrived at his house and does not give him any food. In those days as now, food was a real hospitality thing. An outcast is one who speaks what is untrue, enveloped by delusion, seeking to obtain something for himself. An outcast is one who extols himself and despises others, considering them inferior because of his conceit. An outcast is one who provokes anger, stinginess, of evil desires, miserly, deceitful, without moral shame or moral dread. And I guess at this point he felt he could get this in. An outcast is one who reviles the Buddha or reviles his disciples, whether a wanderer or a householder. An outcast is not actually an arhat. An outcast who is not actually an arhat who claims to be an arhat. So all of these are descriptions of an outcast. The last case, so someone who is not an arhat who claims they're an arhat, the Buddha considered this to be the lowest of outcasts, because it's felt in Buddhism that claiming religious attainment that you do not actually have is a serious violation for monks of the monastic code and kind of a serious violation of Buddhism. So after the Buddha has cited this list of outcasts, he sums it up by saying, by action one becomes an outcast. By action one becomes a Brahman. Social class does not prevent one from a bad destination or reproach. One is not an outcast by birth, nor by birth is one a Brahman. By action one becomes an outcast. By action one becomes a Brahman. So, I think there's some other ways to look at this whole idea of being an outcast. And when I look at myself, I see sometimes shades of myself in this list of outcasts. Okay, because of the way I act sometimes. So the point of this detailed list of the outcast is not to necessarily look outside of yourself and be classifying people as outcasts, but it's really to scrutinize our own behavior. To not go around labeling others as outcasts. Our daily actions of body, speech, and mind are our karma in action. And our karma, action and results, determines how our rebirth now and in the future will be. It is a good thing, without introducing any sense of guilt, to hold a mirror up to your own life and to take a good look and see what we need to change. See where this outcast business is arising. We can ask the question, do we treat other people as sort of outcasts? Precepts, meditation, and occasionally getting some counsel from the wise can really help us here. The wonderful thing about Buddhism is that we can change for the better if we are willing to take a look and work at what needs changing. But you have to take a look. It just isn't by osmosis. Soap opera is about looking outward and blaming others and conditions, blaming conditions outside of ourselves. Nothing really changes by this. Observing what we ourselves are getting up to, reflecting on how we might change, and stepping into the change are actions that turn an outcast into a decent human being. Reverend Master Jiu used to say that the definition of religion is doing something about yourself. It wasn't any highfalutin, philosophical, theoretical, esoteric thing. It was about doing something about yourself. Our Buddhist practice should always draw us closer to the human race, as opposed to isolating us from others. So if we're isolating ourselves from others in our Buddhist practice, we want to take a look. It is easy to pass judgment on others. In a way, this is like a mental caste system we create. If we consider others outcasts, in fact, it's we ourselves who become outcasts. We have the opportunity in our life and our Sangha practice to break down these mental walls. We're surrounded by all kinds of different human beings. We come in all shapes and colors, sexes, sizes, whatever. We're just, people are different, but not that different. It's fine that not everyone is our best friend and buddy. That doesn't usually happen. It's the rare person who just everybody is their best friend. The thing is, we just don't want to go too far in the direction of exclusive friendships and walling out the people that we don't like or don't agree with or who are difficult to get along with. It's a good thing to be friendly with all kinds of people. To be friendly. As followers of the Buddha, we need to constantly broaden our hearts. In the Mahayana, we have our Bodhisattva vows, which implore us to be expansive with beings. That's the whole thing about saving beings. It's being expansive with beings. We say that harmony is the Sangha treasure. It's a treasure. Okay? Difference actually can be an asset in finding a better way to do something. It's not essential all the time that everybody agrees. And you don't sometimes get the best solution if it's just everybody agreeing and having a patting on the back affair. Difference does not always have to be resolved to be harmonious with each other. So sometimes differences can just stand. Sometimes it comes down to, can you live with it? And in life, we got to live with a lot of things. So difference can just stand as difference and as different ways of approaching an issue. Sometimes we feel a different approach to something is causing harm to others. And there may be something there. So if, after looking into the matter with some thoroughness, we feel we need to take a stance, we need to say something, we need to do something, that's not un-Buddhist. Okay? But what we need to do when we do this is really consider and contemplate, so we can present, I'll go back to that. Really consider and contemplate what's happening as opposed to what we think is happening. And then hopefully we can present our case in a way that is compassionate and wise. We do this lest we fall into emotionality, anger, and mental walling out of others. Okay. In the Dhammapada, the twin verses of the Buddha teach us, hatreds never cease by hatred in this world. By love alone they cease. This is an ancient law. I just love that, you know. And I know this is not an easy task. And still, we vow to do this as Buddhist practitioners. And this is a teaching of the Buddha, a very difficult one, to return things with love. If we trod the noble path of living in harmony with beings, the world will become a more harmonious place, even if the news portrays it otherwise. Because, you know, no matter how good the news is, no matter how truthful the news is, it only gives part of the picture. And because they've got limited time, the news tends to dwell on the sensational and the awfulness, and maybe slip in a few of the positive things that are happening. And I think this presents a limited picture of the world. So I tore off a little piece of paper on my Wisdom of East calendar today. So today's the first day of summer, if you didn't know that. And the quote that was on it was from Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, who was one of the great Thai forest masters of the 20th century. He says, "Let us look at a humble virtue, that of gratitude. With this virtue alone, the world could be at peace." So with that simple virtue of gratitude, the world could be at peace if we practice it. So I want to end with another quotation, and this is again from the Dhammapada by the Buddha. And the Buddha said, "Not by matted hair, not by clan, not by birth does one become a Brahmin. The one in whom there is truth and Dharma is the one who is pure, is a Brahmin." And a Brahmin here refers to both male and female disciples of the Buddha. May we all be disciples of the Buddha. Thank you. Homage to all the Buddhas in all worlds. Homage to all the Bodhisattvas in all worlds. Homage to the Sutta of great wisdom.